When I was younger, I used to love reading magazines. We always used to have them in the house, whether it was Essence, Vogue, National Geographic, Reader's Digest. As the years went on and print media started to sort of take a backseat to digital media, I found myself reaching for them less and less. But on the odd occasion that I did pick one up, I would find myself being transported back to those early days, thumbing through the glossy pages and reading the most random articles, but always learning something and coming away with something new. Sometime late last year, I decided that I wanted to add magazines back into my regular reading rotation, especially since I've been trying to get back into consuming long form and traditional journalism. I knew that I didn't want to start getting physical copies just because I don't have the space and it's not the most convenient for taking your reading with you. So I figured it might make more sense and be more convenient for me to look at something like a digital subscription. And that is where Apple News Plus came in. Now, you may already be familiar with Apple News, which is their news aggregator. Apple News Plus expands on that, giving you access to premium features. You get to see content that's typically behind a paywall. There are puzzles. There are also audio stories if you prefer to have your articles read to you. But the feature that I'm going to spend most time talking about today, and the one that I enjoy the most, is obviously the magazines. And I'd go so far as to say that the magazines alone make that $12.99 a month subscription fee worth it. So the experience of reading a magazine on News Plus, especially if you're using a device like the iPad, I think is the closest experience you'll get, or one of the closest experiences you'll get to having an actual physical issue in your hand. And I honestly feel like the Apple News Plus subscription and the iPad just go hand in hand. You could, in theory, read on your phone or on a Mac, for example, but this is the device that I find myself reaching for more often than not when I'm ready to read my magazines. I currently use the iPad Air 4th generation, and it's close to the standard 8.5 by 11 size that most standard magazines are. Although, it is an electronic device, it is a lot heavier than your average magazine, so that's just something to keep in mind. The magazines are actually rendered similarly to the way that they appear in print, with high quality images and text. And with some of the publications, not only are you seeing articles, you're also seeing those ads that you would see in a regular issue. And although I don't enjoy having ads pop up in any part of my digital life, I actually don't mind them in magazines. I just think that, that's part of the experience that you come to expect. And so I'm not quite offended when I'm flipping through an article and then I see an ad for like deodorant or something. Now, once you're in the actual issue, you'll see that there's actually a table of contents, so you can pull that up, skim through the contents, and then you can quickly jump to a specific article if that's what you wanted to do, or you can simply go page by page. There's also an option to change your font size, so you can make it as small or as large as you need it to be. You can bookmark stories. And then one thing that you'll notice about Apple News in general is that the algorithm curates content for you based on your reading patterns. And one way that you can help to improve its suggestions is by either liking or disliking articles. And you'll see in the top left, you have two icons that'll allow you to do that. There are over 400 publications to choose from, so you're really spoiled for choice. And the nice thing is that you can have as many of those subscriptions with you in one place at any time. If I want to read an article in the Wall Street Journal, but then there's a feature in the Atlantic, got to catch up on my New York magazine, I don't need to have all of those physical issues with me. I can have them all on one device, whether it's this iPad or, like I mentioned, my computer or my phone. Okay, so for the majority of this video, I've been singing Apple News Plus's praises. I also did want to talk about some of the cons or things that you might want to consider. First is the subscription price. I briefly mentioned earlier that it's $12.99 a month, and not everyone is going to be willing to pay that. What I will say is that if I were paying for individual subscriptions, it would add up to way more than that, given how much and how many publications I'm actually reading. And again, that subscription includes other things like the audio stories, the puzzles, etc. I've tried a few other apps like Magster and Zinio, But the reality is that I am so deeply invested in the Apple ecosystem, and so this subscription makes sense for me. You could just use the free version of Apple News if you just wanted to get, the major headlines of the day. There are other apps that I would recommend as well. If you were just looking for something that's free, you don't want to be paying to read the news or to read magazines, although I think that goes back to a larger conversation of why you wouldn't want to support journalism. There are RSS readers that you can set up with your preferred sources. So Feedly, for example, I used to use that a lot when I wanted to specify and select which sources I wanted to see, as opposed to having an app tell me what I should be reading. But if you don't want to make the effort to put together or curate your sources, then I can also suggest other apps like Google News or Flipboard, which are free as far as I know. Another thing to keep in mind is that while the library is extensive, there are some publications that you just won't find on there. For example, you will not find the New York Times on there because NYT has its own subscription model. And another thing that I think can really be improved about this app is the layout. Usually I just bypass the home screen and go straight to my magazines. But if you're someone who's trying to actually look at the news and go through your For You page, I think sometimes it can be a bit cluttered, and it sometimes feels like just a hodgepodge of articles being thrown at me, a lot of which I am not necessarily interested in. I just wish there was a way to better organize my feed. I know that you can actually select certain topics and publications and themes and arrange them in the left nav bar, I believe. It just takes a bit of effort to curate your sources within those filters. So it's not all great. There are things that I think can be better about the app. I also wanted to touch a bit on how this subscription has sort of changed my reading routine for the better. I usually like to take the time now, typically on Sunday mornings, to sit down, have a slow morning with a cup of tea and my magazines. That to me is luxury. Okay, it's like a little treat that I get to look forward to every weekend. It's been a way for me to slow down, to really zone in and focus on long form articles, to learn something new about interior design or cooking or the state of the world, to get recommendations for new shows, books, music, movies. And honestly, I think this is something that we need to bring back, right? I think that we need that added layer of depth and nuance that comes from traditional journalism, and that comes from the effort that it takes for someone to, for example, sit down and have a conversation for a feature, the effort that it takes to produce those think pieces, the effort that it takes to do the investigative work that can bring us nuanced insights into cultural moments, All of these are things that I think are missed with the bite-sized media and bite-sized entertainment that we so often fall back on these days, whether it's, scrolling through TikTok or Twitter. All of that to say that if you're looking for a seamless way to integrate magazines back into your reading routine the way that I was, then I can recommend News Plus. It's never going to replace that feeling of having an actual print issue in your hand, but I think that it's a happy medium. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe. Comment and let me know if you have tried the Apple News Plus service. If you have not, would you consider it? And also let me know what some of your favorite publications are if you're into magazines. I'd be happy to hear from you down in the comment section as always. So take good care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.